I'm Karina Okotel, and this is the weekly wrap-up. Some good news finally coming out of Victoria in seemingly perpetual lockdown this week. The Andrews government has backed down on the omnibus bill, which had already been rushed through the lower house. The bill would have given undefined authorised officers the power to indefinitely detain people on their subjective belief that they won't comply with an emergency directive. What this demonstrates is that even for a government that has such little respect for civil liberties as the Victorian Labor government, when there is a concerted community campaign which attracts a broad spectrum of support from left-leaning civil society and legal professional organisations to conservative groups like the Australian Christian Lobby and so many everyday individuals, there does come a point that government can't ignore the people. Having been involved in many political advocacy campaigns, achieving success like this is sadly very rare and does require the people, media, organisations of all political persuasions to come together in unison. The far simpler way to prevent bad government forming in the first place is to ensure that the decision makers who fill our parliamentary benches are people who respect our freedoms and share our values. This is why it's so important that ordinary people get involved in political parties to pre-select MPs who will actually represent us. Now, in 2018, the Consultative Council on Obstetric and Paediatric Mortality and Morbidity reported that in Victoria, there were 173 abortions at 20 weeks or later for social or psychological reasons where there is no problem or disability found with the baby. Abortions at 20 weeks or later for suspected or confirmed congenital abnormality, from cleft palate to chromosomal disorders such as Down syndrome, were recorded at 179. Of these, more than 1 in 6, that is 29 babies in 2018, were born alive. When we want to kill dogs, even they receive pain relief. How is it that we, an apparent civilised society, don't treat human babies with the same humanity as we would a dog? Joining me now is the Vice President of the March for the Babies, which is taking place at 1 p.m. this Saturday online. Fellow Good Source contributor, also known as political posting mama, Mareika Ranci, who will be speaking at the march tomorrow. Welcome, Mareika. Can I ask you, what inspired you to get involved with March for the Babies?
Hi, Karina. Thanks so much for having me on. So basically, what inspired me to get involved, similar to you, I have such a heart for this cause and for this issue, and relatively new, actually, because I didn't realise until only a few years ago what the legislation and the laws were. So I was someone who personally was softly pro-life in my own life. For myself, but I'd never actually been an activist on the issue. I'd kind of kept my views to myself. But when I found out that we had legislated in Victoria the most extreme abortion laws in the world, with, ironically, Daniel Andrews as our health minister at the time, I was absolutely horrified. I mean, the latest abortion on record in Victoria of a healthy baby with a healthy mother, and it was psychosocial reasons that she aborted her baby, was at 37 weeks. Now, for me, all my babies were born at 37 weeks. And so suddenly it really, really forced me to think about and be confronted by what the reality of where we're at. I think the pro-abort movement have been very successful in sanitising, and it's a very dishonest movement in that they, dehumanise babies by even the language they use. And so I'm someone who believes in standing up for actual human rights and for fighting for things that really matter. And I want to set the example for my children, and I want to be known as someone who is willing to stand up for the things that really, truly matter, despite any personal cost. And so for me, I'm a big believer in the fact that we can actually change policy once you work out how the system works, which was, once again, something I didn't know. It's quite empowering. And so I got involved in the committee to basically throw my hand in the fight and plant my flag and do what I can to be part of, I guess, what we're now in, which is the culture war.
Good on you. And how long has the march been going on for now?
So this will be, I believe, the 11th year of the march. And obviously, so the abortion law passed in 2008, and their first march run by the amazing Bernie Finn, who was in Parliament at the time and obviously lost the vote. And when he shared with me his experience as to why he decided, he felt so forlorn about it that he felt, what can I do now? And it was to march for the babies. So that was, we're going into the 11th year now. And unfortunately, we're in a time, obviously, due to the lockdown, where we can't march in person. So we're going to do our online protest.
Fantastic. And there are always thousands and thousands of people who do attend the march each year, yet either the media doesn't cover it or only covers any sort of counter protest where there are just a handful of people, and they always carry signs and do chant abusive words. They're quite intimidating, frightening, whereas there's such a positive mood in contrast with those who are protesting against our abortion laws. I remember in one year in particular, someone even had a sign saying, "The only good baby is a dead baby," trying to undermine the March for Babies protest itself. How will the march work online this year? And do you think the mainstream media will finally pay attention to this issue this time around?
Look, I've lost a lot of faith in the mainstream media. I think Donald Trump's been a champion for exposing the hashtag fake news. And when he started throwing that term around and getting on Twitter, I still wasn't overly aware of just how lost from the mainstream the media had become. And really, that they're really, as I've written in some of my articles, they're activists. They're not journalists. And so they're activists for the other side. So I think you'll always have alternative media will cover, and I think that's such a gift for us at this time because the narrative still can get out, but it does take people like us, citizen journalists, and people on the other side to share and be bold and brave in doing it. But no, it's doubtful that there'll be any coverage. I was absolutely shocked. The very first march I went to was actually last year. So that was an amazing experience. The year before, I was very, very anxious about going, and we didn't go in the end. But last year it was just such a beautiful day. And you're right, there was, the pro-abortion lobby are incredibly vicious and nasty. And I had my children there, and there were certain activists who even stuck their finger up at my 12-year-old child on the other side, which is not surprising considering the very extreme stance that they take. But I felt very safe. I actually felt safe. The police did a great job and protected us. And it's a family day. The sun was shining, and I was really amazed at how many thousands of us there were. And I hope every year that it grows, and I hope people grow in courage. And I hope as people become more educated that they realise that they're allowed to have a voice, and not only are they allowed, they should have a voice. And the bigger we become in number, the stronger we get. But I don't expect the mainstream media to cover it like they have in most years, unless there's punch-ons, which happened. I think poor Bernie Finn got punched one year, and that was the year they got the most media attention. Hopefully, this year we don't have to throw our bodies on the line, but there's a wonderful opportunity in an online protest, because online can't be, it can basically spread like wildfire if people share. So I encourage everyone to share, be brave, and share the online protest. It's going to be very professionally put together, and it's given us another opportunity. Obviously, we'd love to be there physically, but let's use this as an opportunity to spread the message into hearts and minds that the message may not have got to.
And during the US vice presidential debate this week, Mike Pence had this to say. Here's a bit of a clip from the debate.
I couldn't be more proud to serve as vice president to a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of human life. I'm pro-life. I don't apologize for it. And this is another one of those cases where there's such a dramatic contrast. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris support taxpayer funding of abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. Late-term abortion. They want to increase funding to Planned Parenthood of America. Now, for our part, I would never presume how Judge Amy Coney Barrett would rule on the Supreme Court of the United States, but we'll continue to stand strong for the right to life. When you speak about the Supreme Court, though, I think the American people really deserve an answer, Senator Harris. Are you and Joe Biden going to pack the court if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed? I mean, there have been 29 vacancies on the Supreme Court during presidential election years, from George Washington to Barack Obama. Presidents have nominated in all 29 cases. But your party is actually openly advocating adding seats to the Supreme Court, which has had 9 seats for 150 years, if you don't get your way. This is a classic case of, if you can't win by the rules, you're going to change the rules.
Marika, let's unpack what Vice President Pence just said. Firstly, he wasn't ashamed to say that he and the president are pro-life. Yet it seems in Australian politics, there are few MPs who would dare even declare this. Why do you think there's a difference here?
So it's been interesting for me to watch over the last few years, as I mentioned, the culture wars, in an environment where I guess one side has basically gained momentum, and I'd say the pro-abortion lobby have really, over the years, have just, picked away at building their campaigning to the point where it is such a hot topic. People know there's a lot of emotion around it on both sides, but basically you'll be viciously attacked. But there's been a real shift in the United States, and it's come from the leaders. But before the leaders get to the point where they can come out and lead and basically stand up, you do need culture warriors to set the tone in the culture. And so, I think that's where we're at now. There's a culture war happening, and part of that is actually about the education, and that's been the gift that social media has given. It's one thing to talk about, fetuses and clumps of cells, but actually when you see the procedure and you see online, you see how this is done. There have been some wonderful cartoon exposures and things like that. And when you actually see this for what it is, it's the truth, ultimately, hopefully people then have courage and find their voices. And I mean, it's so inspiring to have leadership who are willing to stand up and have the courage. And we've got a few MPs that have the courage, but ultimately, they're there to represent the people. So they need people in the culture to basically be brave and to set the narrative and set the tone and to start speaking up. And I'm excited to see. I think that's actually starting to happen. I really, really genuinely do. And Australia's a little bit behind there. We're kind of stepping into this space at the moment, but it's exciting to think that policy and law can change, and the silent majority doesn't need to be silent. In fact, they shouldn't be silent. The time is now to actually stand up and speak up and have your say and be brave. It's okay. It's okay to do that. And not only is it okay, we should do it.
Absolutely. And the second point Pence made was that if the Democrats do gain power, they could change the rules to appoint more judges to the Supreme Court so that progressive judges would then outnumber conservatives. And Harris never denied this, although, Pence confronted it about it several times, as we saw. The left do constantly talk about transparency and following rules, but when things don't go their way, transparency and rules seem to fly out the window. As someone who's been in the trenches battling the left on radical gender theory in schools and so many other things, how is it that they seem to get away with this kind of hypocrisy all the time?
Yeah, well, I think for a long time they have got away with it. And I think, we've kind of, like I said, the silent majority, we've just allowed this to happen. But Pendulums can go too far, and I actually think that's what's happening now. And I think things are being exposed and brought to light, and the truth always rises to the top. And so, I am someone who identifies. I actually grew up in a leftist home. We had The Age lying around the house, and ABC News was always on, and we were just, very leftist ideology, and consider myself a social justice warrior. Only because I'm a caring person, and as we know, these causes really, really appeal to your emotion and your need for justice and care. But it's obviously everything seems upside down, and for me, they went too far and they exposed themselves. And like I mentioned, with the abortion movement, for example, it's one thing to talk about women's rights and women's choices and to really sanitize it, but you expose yourself when you're willing to actually kill a baby and think it's perfectly acceptable, minutes before they're born, and partial birth abortion, as we know, which has been legalized. So I think the hypocrisy and the lies, I'm a big believer that the truth always comes out in the end. Truth stands up. And so people are starting to see it. And there's a massive movement in the United States called the walkaway movement. And we're seeing a similar thing here. People who normally would identify themselves on the left, just because it's kind of the popular thing to do. When you start to critically think, you quickly will jump ship if you're genuinely a person who genuinely believes in the rights of individuals, the true rights.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining me today, Marika. And for those who are ready to join the online protest on Saturday, where should they go?
Okay, so we have a website that you can jump onto, www.marchforthebabies.com. And if you get onto that website, you can actually click on to book the link. So marchforthebabies.com and click on the online protest. It's on at 1 p.m. this Saturday online, and it's going to be fantastic. We've got some great cartoon videos that have been produced. We'll have some music. We have Martin Isles and Amanda Stoker will be speaking along with myself. I'm going to speak about some of the things we've talked about now. And, click on and share it and be brave and bold. The hate is real, but it doesn't make it right. And so if you get opposition, it's okay. There's opposition in all things, but, the support is actually a lot quieter and a lot stronger. And that's been my experience on pretty much every issue. Yes, the hate is there and they're very vocal, but actually the quiet, gentle, kind support you get is great. So be bold and be brave and stand up. If you truly believe that it's wrong to kill babies for any reason without pain relief at the right up until birth, which is going on, and it's not rare. That's a false narrative. It's I believe a movement now that's a lot about coercion and doesn't genuinely support women. So this is March for the Babies is also about supporting women to make good choices in their life so that they aren't traumatized and so that they get to actually live the life that they truly want without this coercion and misunderstanding that you can take the life of your own baby and not have trauma and consequences.
Thanks, Marika. Well, one of the many strange things about having been in lockdown in Victoria now for so long and only seeing people online from the torso up is that I haven't had the opportunity to tell many people that I'm pregnant at the moment. I'm now in my final trimester, and let me tell you, this little one constantly lets his presence be felt. It's unconscionable that the state would let me try to kill this healthy little guy, and if after being aborted he survived, doctors who pledged to do no harm could deny him milk, comfort, or even pain relief and just leave him to die. Given that I'll soon be on maternity leave, this will be my last weekly wrap up for 2020, but I would like to thank you so much for tuning in and for your incredible support of The Good Source since its launch just 3 months ago. It's been so heartening to see the growing supporter base of people pursuing truth in media over fake news. And until next time, look after yourself and those around you. Keep fighting the good fight and keep on The Good Source.